Today we're in 10.5, which is about parabolas, which are U-shapes. So there's a definition that won't dramatically affect your homework life, but what we're trying to do today is imagine every point on this U is the same distance away from a point called the focus as it is from a line called the directrix. So like this point right here, it's the same distance from the focus as it is from the directrix. If we found all of those, we'd end up getting ourselves a U-shape called a parabola. The word focus is still in play. That's what the parabola is going to wrap around. The word vertex is still in play. That's going to be the bottom or top of our U. The directrix is a new word. The directrix is a dotted line we're never going to touch. We're always going to run away from it. If the U is headed this way, the equation will always be x squared equals some mystery number and then a y. If it was y instead being squared, it's just going to turn sideways. We'll see a little bit of those. But as long as x squared is there, we're going to get a normal kind of a U, maybe flip, maybe not. So there's a companion sheet of notes for this. I basically just read you the front, I think. To the back, we start to do some math. So key again, as always, if there's no parentheses, there's not a center this time, but there is a vertex. The vertex will be at the origin as long as you don't see parentheses. So I don't see parentheses, I don't see parentheses, I don't see parentheses, and in a minute in my normal spot over here where I end up every day factoring by completing the square, I'm going to see parentheses and the vertex will not be at the origin. For these few beginners, the vertex is all at the origin. The other superstar note here is, to find the focus, we're going to just have to divide the number in the equation by 4. Always by 4, just take it by faith. It's just the way it is. So I need this number to divide by 4, and I'm going to get a 2 out of that. If x is being squared, the 2 is going to be a y coordinate, with 0 being the other item. The directrix is always the same letter. Since we had a y here, I'm going to go y equals. I'm going to use the same number, but the sign is going to change. So I'm going to get y equals -2. So again, origin is the vertex anytime there's no parentheses. 8 divided by 4 is how I got the 2. If x is squared, it's going to be a y number. And I'm keeping the y motif going, but changing the sign of what I had. For graph purposes, I would use the origin for the vertex. 0, 2 is up 2 for the focus. A y of -2 is down 2, doing a dotted line for the directrix. And then our U shape is always going to come from the vertex and wrap around the focus while running away from the directrix. We'll never touch the directrix. So that's a lot like the one that I had over here facing the same direction. As long as x squared were that direction. So this I do a change of pace. It's y squared. So I don't see parentheses, so I'm at the origin. I do this divided by 4, always divided by 4. This divided by 4 would be a -5. But -5 is going to be an x number because I switched the roles of x and y. If y is squared, it's all x facts. The directrix would be an x fact. And I would just take this sign and switch it. And what's happened when x and y traded is the u is about to be taking a nap. So vertex at the origin is there. -5 is back here. X equals 5 is right 5, and that's a vertical line. All x equals lines are vertical, all y equals lines will be horizontal. And then we want our u to always be commencing at the vertex, wrapping around the focus, and running away and never touching the directrix. So this is my vertex to start from. That u wrapped around the focus and ran away from the directrix. Any y squared kind of u's are going to be on their side. This one, because of the negative, also it just went back in the other direction. So here we go again. This has a vertex at the origin because I continue to not see parentheses. If you try to do 6 divided by 4, that doesn't cooperate. If you're fraction friendly, go ahead and do a fraction. People with calculators might prefer decimals. Negative 6 dividing 4 is negative 1.5. The negative 1.5 will be an x number because y is squared. So we're more like this one again. Y being squared gives us x facts. So x equals, same number but switch sign. Forgot that should have been a 0. Vertex again at the origin. Negative 1.5 for the focus would be left, a square and a half. X equals 1.5 would be right, a square and a half to do a vertical line. And again, always start from the vertex to make a U that surrounds and wraps the focus and runs away from the directrix. Same shape as this because it was y squared again with negative numbers. If the y squared had a positive number, it would have opened that way instead. If this one had a negative number, our U would have been headed down instead. They're all going to be U shapes today. That's what parabola means. And then that'll take you through the first group of the homework. Homework is 447. You should be good now rolling from 1 to 8. 9 and 10, they go in reverse. 9 and 10, they're going to tell you the vertex and focus and want you to reverse and get the equation. So on this, I can see that I have an x fact. So I'm going to go y squared equals. There's going to be the other letter at the end. But with an x fact, it's y squared. Then usually we've been dividing to make the focus. If we reverse the process, you would multiply to make the equation. Take this number and multiply by 4. 4 is the number of the day. This has been brought to you by the number 4. For this, with y facts, we're going to go x squareds. Put a y at the end just to be there. Take the focus and multiply by 4. A half times 4, that's a 2. And that should help you do 9, 10, 11, 12. 13, 14, if you're an algebra genius and you want a challenge problem, try to figure out 13, 14. My hint to you would be you'd have to probably make a graph to do it. And you'll probably need to understand what happens here and do this backward. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. People that don't want to do 13, 14, just skip 13, 14. But if you want to be a super genius, take on a challenge, you could try to do 13, 14. 13's in the back, 14 isn't. You could figure it out that way. But feel free to omit 13, 14 because those are usually like a day 2 tricky problem that involves me going details that I don't know that it's necessary. From 15 to the end, we need to do a little bit of factoring by completing the square, a little bit of rough draft creation, that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do with these today is look for the square. Y squared is running this problem. Keep all of its y friends near it. Let's see, what was this supposed to be? This was supposed to equal 0. So keep the y squared and the y together, and everything else get out of there. The 4x is going to change sign and get out of there. The minus 7 changes sign and gets out of there. Whatever the square is, keep it together, get everything else out. We'll need to complete this and fill in a missing number and pay for it, as always. This would be y plus 1, because we're continuing to cut in half. This times itself is a plus 1. I pay for that with a plus 1. So I'm going to show up negative 4x plus 8. This side is good. This side, the x is never allowed to have any number with it. So whatever number, if there is one with the x, it has to come off. Negative 4 has to come off. Conveniently, it will divide evenly into 8. Negative 4 into 8 is negative 2. But even if this were like a 7, the 4 would have to come off. And the 7 would have to be a fraction or decimal if it came down to it. That's just the way that has to go. So we factor by completing the square, and now I do see parentheses. So the vertex is not the origin. The vertex is going to have a -1 from this and a +2 from this, because we're changing the signs as always. But it's 50-50 that we might be out of order compared to what your instinct is. You see -1 first, it might make you want to put it here, and that's wrong. The -1 is in the y family. So with the y family to change signs, the -1 needs to be the second number. The x of +2 needs to be the first number. To do the focus and to do the directrix, I will continue to try to sell the idea of set up an area where you have a rough draft created. So I would see that the y is being squared. So I'm going to think about x numbers and x facts. I'm going to look to this number and divide by 4, so that's -1. This would be then a +1. And then I will change those facts because 2 as an x is going to add everything xy. So 2 adds this xy item. 2 would also have to add this because this is an x kind of thing, so we're up to 3. The -1 is only going to add the y stuff. This is my only y item, so there's a -1. Unlike the other days, I'm probably just going to graph from the final information. 2 -1 is the vertex. 1 -1 is the focus. And x equals 3 is the directrix. And I always want my graph to start from the vertex, which is always the middle thing. And it always runs away from the directrix, the dotted line, and it should always surround the focus. I have one more of those, so I'll clear a quick amount of space, and that'll be it for our day. So the last one I have is x squared plus 2x minus 8y minus 3 equals 0. So if we're going to factor here by completing the square, x squared is my first thing. I'm always going to look to find the square. X is squared, so that's running the problem. Keeps the 2x near it, and get everything else out of there. The -8y becomes positive, the -3 becomes an add 3. When we do opposites to ship them out. This is a missing link. I'm going to have to pay for it later. This is x plus 1 squared, because half of that. This times this is an add 1, which I paid for with an add 1. Cleaning up the adding part of that is 8y plus 4. But the y is not allowed to have a number with it. So I'm going to have to take off that whole 8, whether I want to or not. And when I try to have 4 and divide by 8, we're going to need to go decimal or fraction, half or 0.5 or whatever you prefer. To do the vertex, I'm going to go -1 for this, and that's an x, and that goes first. -1/2 for y, that goes second. To do the focus, I'm going to rough draft it. X is squared, so these are not real answers, they're just helping me get there. Since x is squared, I'm going to go y facts. 8 dividing 4 is 2, and that makes this a -2. -1 will add on to anything with the x, which is only the 0. That's the only x item. -1/2 adds to both of these y items. If 2 adds -1/2, that's positive 1.5. If -2 and -1/2 get together, that's negative 2.5. Small erasure for a graph item. Vertex -1, -1/2 would be left 1, down 1/2. Focus is -1 also, but 1.5. So we're up. Directrix is -2.5. So I go down 2.5 squares and go dotted line. And then this was the vertex, that's where we draw from, the run away from the directrix and never touch the dotted line, and it should wrap around the focus. We're only 1 day of homework here, so this is 447. We're looking to work 1 to 24. But this is the last lesson for a little while. So we're 447 tonight into tomorrow. Tomorrow is just no new lesson, just get on top of homework tomorrow, absorb and get there. There will be a sheet 2 days away that will review 10.4 and 10.5, the hyperbolas and the parabolas. And that'll take us to Friday, and we'll be looking to quiz next week as part of the new packet that's coming out to get a new group going. So email me if you have questions, see you in Zoom or something if you do, hopefully.